Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott.
And I'm Craig Christoffersen.
And so we're going to be doing a review today together as a collaboration, the Potensic Atom 2 drone, and more specifically, the new controller that they have just launched with it. And so I am going to be giving you a look at what's included with the new kit, some of the design and specifications. We've done some various tests together as a part of that. And then Craig's going to do the heavy lifting and talking about the actual usability of the drone itself, some of the image quality, breakdown, things like that. And then we're going to wrap it up together at the end. We'll talk about things that work and some things that don't work. And so we're going to jump into this together, and I'm going to start by giving you a look at what's in the box, and then Craig's going to take it over from there. All right, let's start by talking about what you get in the kit. And so if you get the standard kit, which retails for $479 US, you're going to get the drone, you're going to get a flight battery, and you're going to get the controller, obviously, and then 8 replacement propellers, various cables like that. The Fly More kit that Craig and I are looking at today, it's going to run $599, and what you're getting with that is you're getting a total of 3 flight batteries. You're going to get the multi-bay charger for that. Obviously getting a case to handle all of this, AC adapter for that, and then you get a total now of 16 different propellers. So apparently the Fly More package is also the Crash More package. And while this doesn't have obstacle avoidance, it does give you lots of propellers to replace them when you do potentially crash the drone along the way. One of the features that I do really like, obviously in this charger, it is designed to where it is running at a little bit higher current, and so you can, instead of just sequentially charging batteries, you can simultaneously charge all 3 of them. That can be useful. But I do like the fact that every one of these flight batteries also has a USB-C port built right into it, and so they can be simply and individually charged there. I don't love the fact that this included power brick is kind of big and bulky, and so the AC adapter, rather than this running off of a USB-C, you need that AC adapter. So I don't necessarily love that. However, I will also note that you can kind of daisy chain this to where there is a USB-A port out where you can then go USB-A to USB-C and charge this kind of in sequence. And so all of that is useful. The big deal here to talk about is the PTD-1 remote, because it gets you away from using your phone. I hate using my phone as a part of drones. I'm currently using a very minimalist type case because of not just for drones, but for photography in general. I find that there's so many cables that don't quite seat properly, or microphone receivers that don't quite get in there with the normal case. And so I've got this minimalist case that has a cutout where I can accent that more easily. But you also run into the issues to where, my typical controller where it's pinching down, it's always putting the volume up or down or turning the screen off. It's a pain. And so being able to have a nice big 5.5-inch screen is very useful. This is set up at 900 nits of brightness. Now, just to give you a little bit of perspective on that, Craig's using an iPhone 14. It's standardly rated at 800 nits of brightness. My iPhone 15 Pro runs at 1000 nits of brightness, but in both cases, they're able to go up a little bit brighter in outdoor conditions. I find this in bright conditions is maybe just a little bit too dim. And so I would like for future improvement to see just a little bit more potential screen brightness from the screen itself, but it's a nice big screen and you're not messing with apps or interruptions from other things that are popping up. This screen is just for this, and that is really, really nice. You get a 1080p real-time feed with transmission up to 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles. And so that is all great. 120 milliseconds of latency, so relatively lag-free, not too bad there. What's more, you do have 32 gig of internal storage, and it's also micro SD expandable. The actual controller itself has a 3-hour battery life, so you're going to be able to burn through multiple times with all 3 batteries, so that's good. And then also you can recharge it in under an hour and a half. The drone itself, of course, is a 249 gram to get you under the limit, where in most regions here in North America, you can fly it without certification and without registration, particularly in the US with the FAA. This size drone, you don't have to register, which is why so many of them are at at 249 grams. Now, there is a lot of newer technology in the Atom 2 that's not necessarily in some of the older drones that it might compete with. So a lot of AI tracking, automated maneuvers that are not supported by others. And so as far as the packaging and the pricing goes, this is competitively priced with equivalent DJI type offerings, but the major difference here is that you are getting a pretty awesome controller with a lot of dedicated controls here and dedicated antennae, and so you get a more stable transmission. And of course, there is the reality that in the US, it's increasingly difficult to actually purchase DJI products, and so the Atom 2 and the new PTD-1 controller is probably going to slot right into a pretty necessary niche in the market. Now we're going to go back to Craig, and he is going to give you a look at the actual performance and handling of all of this and whether it's an actually decent drone to use. Let's take a look.
Let's talk about how the Atom 2 actually handles when flying it. The Atom 2 comes with 3 different speed modes: video, normal, and sport. Now for video mode, this is of course fantastic for recording video, and the controls and the inputs are very nice and slow and smooth, and so you can get really nice pans, tilts, dollies, zooms, whatever you want to call it. You can do all of your camera movements very smoothly. So video is fantastic, and it's really the mode that I spent the most time in because it can give you just the nicest looking footage. Stepping it up to normal, there is an increase in speed and maneuverability. And finally, going all the way up to sport, you can travel at 16 meters per second, which if that doesn't mean much to you, that's 57 kilometers an hour. So you can certainly travel very fast. And it did hold up okay, decent within windy conditions. It did give me a notifier a couple of times as I was flying at an altitude of 150 meters that windy conditions were going to affect its maneuverability, and so the speed, even in sport mode, was slowed down a decent amount just because you have this tiny drone flying against some heavy winds there. But each different speed setting that the Atom 2 can fly in offers you a different speed of maneuverability, and they each have their own place. Although, as somebody who would primarily record video with it, video mode was a fantastic use. And within each of these mode settings, you can adjust the actual thumbstick inputs and the sensitivity of both the thumbstick inputs and also the camera tilt. And in my personal opinion, I would say that the camera tilt needs to be, that value needs to be lowered down as a default. From out of the box, I found it was too highly sensitive. Its movement was too abrupt. And so I actually turned that value down within the remote control and found it to be much more usable and smooth. Now, talking about the remote control feels great in your hand. It's all notched out to fit the form factor of your hand, just naturally curling up. And so it feels fantastic to use. Now, one thing that I would say, and my feedback here comes from the fact that I live in a colder climate. So for 3 of the 4 seasons of the year, for the majority of the year, I'm going to have to operate this drone with gloves on simply because it's too cold. And so within the thumbstick design of the remote control, I would like to see some kind of thicker top of the thumbsticks be provided as an option moving forward, because I'm going to have to use gloves whenever it comes to winter conditions, cold winter, snowy conditions. I'm not going to want to be out there with my bare hands operating this thing. So whenever you put gloves on, that kind of inhibits a little bit your ability to make precise movements. So this is not just a feedback with the Potensic remote control. This goes not specific to brand. It goes drone wide. A lot of drones, they just have these really, really skinny control sticks. And that's something that, as somebody who lives in a colder climate, is not always very usable for me. It makes it so that I'm, having to push the stick rather than place my thumb on top. And so it removes the ability to make fine, precise movements whenever you're wearing gloves. And I'll add that feedback on top of considering the touch screen that's available. The touch screen, it's great and it works fantastic. But again, whenever it gets to cold conditions, I don't want to have to take my glove off my hand at -15 and start touching the touch screen to do different things or to adjust whatever setting I'm trying to adjust. I want to be able to do it very simply. So for this reason, I would say, in my personal opinion, I'd like to see perhaps a little bit more, maybe a couple more physical controls located with onto the actual remote control itself. For example, the 3 different speed modes of video, normal, and sport. I think that that could be a physical control on the remote control itself, just to save users like me who live in a colder climate from having to freeze their fingers off in the middle of the winter because I want to switch flight modes. One note I do have on the build of the drone is that there's not very much securing the battery into the actual housing spot that it's supposed to go in whenever you put the battery into the drone. It's just kind of one little plastic clip holding the battery in there. And Potensic is aware of this because whenever you start up the drone and you start up the propellers and you're ready to take off, it takes the screen away from you and it gives you a warning. And it says, please make sure that the battery it has not become dislodged in any way so that whenever you take off, the battery doesn't fall out. And this isn't something that, to me, is a little bit maybe, I feel like I want that to be more secure. I don't want to check every time I start up the propellers whether the battery has popped out of its placement or not. And so I think that Potensic needs to take into consideration that this is not something that really builds great faith in its user base whenever you have to check every time before you take off whether the battery is actually still connected and fully implanted into its drone housing. So if Potensic could go back and figure out a way to more securely have the battery keep in its place, that would be fantastic. It never happened to me, but Potensic are aware that it is a potential risk that happens there. So please, let's house the battery in a more secure fashion. As far as the drone gimbal goes, it was very steady in operation, and you can use it in 2 different modes of operation. You have the standard or stable mode, and then you have the FPV mode. And in the stable mode, it was very steady, never had problems with it. Even in windy conditions, it held very stable. Now, flipping it into FPV mode is not something that I would recommend. There needs to be significant improvement, in my opinion, for this to be an actual usable gimbal mode, because any type of flight directional input that you are trying to put into the drone as you fly it in FPV mode really throws the camera off. And so it becomes this really kind of juddery movement as you fly in FPV mode. And I just don't think it's a usable gimbal mode. So you'll definitely find yourself sticking to the stable gimbal mode. The Atom 2 comes with 3 different tracking modes. And so the first mode is just a focus feature where you slide your finger over the screen and a green box appears over what you're going to track. And the focus feature, the general focus feature, is that it's going to keep that subject in the middle of the screen no matter what drone input you do. So whether it's in, out, left, right, a circle around, it's going to keep your subject in the middle of the screen. And it did this very well. The next one is parallel tracking, so traveling alongside you. And this feature works decently, although I will say that any sudden or abrupt changes in speed, the drone is not going to be able to keep up with and continue to track, even just from a walk to a decent jog. It wasn't able to keep up with the speed there. So make sure that your speed is consistent if you're going to use that mode. And finally, it has follow tracking. So following you kind of as a rear camera that's just following you as however you are traveling. And this mode, again, it worked well, but because the Atom 2 does not have any object identification or awareness, it's going to run into any obstacle that it comes into, which it almost did. So you'll need to be aware if you're using it as a rear follow camera that the distance is not going to be consistent. If you are changing speeds, it will fall behind. And the other thing is that you need to be aware of where it is following you, because if you are coming around a building or some trees or plants or whatever it is, it's not going to avoid them. So be aware where the drone is whenever you're using it to follow track, because it may run into an obstacle if you don't catch it. Another point is don't wear dark clothing. So for example, here in the shots, you can see that my running attire is all in black, and so going from the light to the shadows, it wasn't able to consistently track me through those lighting changes. Wear some brighter, more contrasty type of clothing, and it will allow the drone to follow you with much better ease. Looking at image quality, you can see that low light image quality is decently noisy. Now, the drone does have a dehaze feature, and since you never have, or it's very difficult to have perfect haze to test this out on, it was a foggy day, so I went and I did the dehaze feature on a foggy day, and you'll notice it's really quite harsh. So again, it's not a perfect kind of hazy day to test it out on, but you can see it does apply its dehaze feature very strongly. So this is maybe a feature that you'd want to avoid and look to apply in post if you are using DaVinci or Premiere Pro, whatever your editing tool is. Maybe stick with the dehaze feature in that. Now, as far as the zoom goes, it is a digital zoom, and you will notice a lot of morphing, a lot of warping going on whenever zooming in and out. So as far as recording through that zoom, for a video feature, I would not recommend it. Another thing that I would like to discuss whenever it comes to image quality is taking a look at the colors that this drone produces. If you are a casual video creator or casual in flying a drone and you don't use post-editing software, then the colors that are going to come out of this drone, I think you're going to be really pleased with. You can look at the deep blues of the water. You can take a look at the fall colors coming out of the trees. It's beautiful, it's deep, and it's rich, and there's really not any tinkering that needs to be done. The colors come out ready to go. Now, following up on image quality, taking a look at the kind of clarity, the precision of these pieces of footage that we're taking a look at, I'm not overwhelmed or incredibly blown away by the precision that we're seeing. Yes, from a faraway distance, the images look pretty good, but at a aperture of f1.8, that's really not a whole lot of focus plane available to you. And so you can hide it a little bit by having the drone further away from your subjects or from the landscape that you're shooting. But whenever you get up nice, tight, and close, you can see that, yes, some subjects or some of the landscape is in focus. But as we look maybe more outwards of the screen, a little higher, a little more to the side, you'll notice that it really doesn't look like the image has been captured by a 4K quality camera. What you'll notice is it's almost looking more like a really nice and precise oil painting rather than a 2025 level 4K technological piece of equipment. And so as far as the precision and the clarity and the sharpness of the image, it's really not something that I'm overwhelmed with. And this would be, I think, my biggest gripe with this drone. I love a lot of things about it. I love how easy it is to handle, get up and fly. But as far as looking at the footage, looking at the images it produces, I would just like a little bit more from it. It's not quite there yet. And looking at and comparing it to some other brands, it falls a little bit short of where I would want it to be. So it can create nice images if you're a hobbyist, but as far as using it in a professional grade, it doesn't quite meet the standard that I would like to see it at. A big issue with the Atom 2 is the lens flares that are going to be produced within the footage. It doesn't really matter if it's early morning, late afternoon, or the middle of the day type of sun. Lens flares are going to be captured in all of these different types of instances. So that's something to be mindful of whenever you're shooting your footage is what way am I facing away from the sun? Because that's the way that I'm going to want to shoot. Otherwise, lens flares are going to pop up and they're going to be very strong. Now, if you want to tinker around with the colors and the coloring, Potensic has launched something called P-Log, which is available to record. And P-Log is Potensic's version of a logarithmic video. And so you can record in P-Log and adjust the coloring to your liking if that is something that you are looking to do.
Okay, we're going to kind of wrap things up by talking about both some pros and cons that emerged while doing a review of the Atom 2. As far as the big pro to me, I love getting away from this kind of controller and getting away from my phone for a lot of reasons. I actually have a phone case on my phone right now that is all about basically having as little case as possible, and so that I have that port available because of so many accessories that I can't make it fit in there. Craig ran into the same thing with his phone case and trying to hook this up. He couldn't get it in there. And so getting away from that, getting away from these clamps, putting up your volume or turning your phone off, all of that is great.
Now, while that may be true, and the brightness on the screen is adjustable, I did find that whenever you are out in the sun, especially during high noon, I found myself seeking out some shade. And so my phone is actually able to be brighter in its screen brightness quality compared to the remote control. So I would say, yes, it's super nice to get away from the phone. However, it does need a boost in brightness.
Right.
Now, something I really did love about the Atom 2 is how easy it was to get it up in the air. All you have to do is turn on the remote control, turn on the drone, unfold its wings, put it down, and you're up, ready to go flying in under a minute.
Yeah, and so that's great. And one of the things we both hate with some other drones is all of the hoops you have to jump through, you know, certifying your this, that, before you can actually finally put it in the air. I've had times where I gave up on flying a drone altogether because I just got frustrated with that process. And so it's great that you can get it up quickly, but the problem is that the footage that you can get comparatively isn't necessarily as good as the equivalent, you know, DJI type drone footage that I've seen on other DJIs that I've owned in the past. And so you can get it up quick, you can start getting footage quick, but the footage isn't quite as good. Now, the final thing that I will say as a positive for me is that this drone does implement a lot of newer AI technologies for tracking, for programmed shots, and it does actually work. We were able to get it to successfully track, to circle around, and to, you know, just kind of do a panoramic type shot around you. All of those things are good, and it is nice to have those flexibilities.
Now, the tracking features worked well, but as a non-casual drone user myself, I found that I would actually prefer to operate the drone and to do the tracking shots myself. I would like the way that footage kind of ended up in the result. I can control the distance myself, and also depending on the environment that you live in, it may not always be useful. Living in, you know, forested land like we do here, it's not always really able or usable to have AI tracking whenever you're running around with a bunch of trees in the way. So, I mean, maybe those extra propellers are gonna come in use there, but that's not really something I'm looking to do. So those features are there, they're great for new people, but for the experienced drone user, you're not going to find yourself using them.
Yeah.
And
even, we did find, even in doing the tracking shot of my truck, just because there are power lines over the road, there was an issue with that, even that it couldn't initiate tracking because there was just too many obstacles in the way. And the only way to get that shot was essentially to fly up above all of that, because there is no obstacle avoidance. And as you can see, as we already tested, it doesn't love these gusts of wind that come up either. I'll let Craig wrap it up here at the end.
Decent hovering feature though.
Yes.
It has stayed quite stable.
Yeah, not bad. At least it hasn't run into me yet. That's all I care about.
Now, in conclusion, I would say if you are a casual drone user, the Potensic Atom 2, as it says, I have done my job and I'm peacing out of here. It's done its job. But if you're a casual drone user, this drone will be great for you. It's so easy to get up and fly. And looking at the price point, what it's coming in, the amount of money that you're going to pay, there's not really a whole lot of other drones available. Tons and tons of various other brands are out of stock right now. So the Potensic Atom 2 is fitting really nicely in the market for Potensic because there's just no challengers to come and compete with it.
Particularly in the US at the moment.
I will, however, say that for somebody who uses the drone for professional photo and video shoots, it's not something where I look at the photo files or I look at the MP4 video files and say, that's something I want to professionally deliver and kind of put my job at risk or behind. I want something that's got a little bit more quality to it, more clarity, more precision in its picture. So if you're a hobbyist, then this is going to be a great deal for you. But if you are a professional looking to use the drone and get paid for the jobs that you're doing, I would say you're going to have to spend a little bit more money to get better image quality.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the usability is great. I think the new controller and the implementation, there's still some bugs to maybe iron out on that and some room for improvement in the future. But having this controller is great. It'll allow you to get the drone into the air, actually have fun flying it. But as Craig said, if you're looking to be someone who wants to professionally deliver a high-end product, well, as is always the case in photography, you got to spend more to make more. I hope that this has helped you out in deciding whether or not the Atom 2 or the new controller, which by the way, you can independently buy the PTD-1 for $279 US if you already have the drone and you just want the controller. And so that isn't a bad deal if you're just looking to add to what you already have. So it is there on the market. As always, thanks for watching today. Let the light in.